All right, folks, it is December the 16th, 2024. And of course, a lot of things are taking place in the world and around the world and all along those lines. So definitely we'll be talking about those and seeing what folks have to say about a number of these things. One person said that possibly 1,000 are dead in the French territory of Mayotte from the powerful cyclone Chito. And one person has said it's as if an atomic bomb fell on Mayotte. So widespread destruction after a 100-year cyclone pummels that French territory. So definitely that did cause some major destruction and definitely some sad loss of life and all along those lines. So definitely that is something that folks are talking about in the news as well. And tourists in Fiji are ill after a suspected pina colada poisoning. So, 7 foreign tourists were hospitalized in Fiji after suspected alcohol poisoning. So, 7 tourists, including one American, hospitalized after drinking cocktails at Fijian resort. So, definitely that's something going on, and that was at a 5-star resort in that particular area. And they're saying that more than 45,000 Palestinians have been killed in the Israeli war on Gaza. So Palestinians mourn the dead after Israeli strikes on Gaza's Khan Younis. So displaced Gazians struggle to escape fighting between Israel and Hamas. And the Hamas run ministry says Israeli strike killed 50 in that particular strike and all along those lines. And Israel has closed its embassy in Ireland, blaming extreme anti Israel policies. So Israel is to shut its Dublin embassy after Ireland backs the Hague petition. So definitely it looks like they're going to be shutting down that embassy in that area. And the deputy prime minister stands by Irish position on Gaza war after Israel closed that embassy and all along those lines. UN envoy calls for inclusive transition in Syria during talks with rebel leaders. So UN envoy meets Syria's Shara and urges inclusive transition. So after Assad ouster in Syria, UN envoy calls for an end to sanctions, and Syrian rebel leaders meets with the UN envoy in Damascus. So definitely that's something else going on in that Middle Eastern conflict. Israel says it plans to double its population in Golan Heights. So, Israel to expand Golan Heights settlements after the fall of Assad. So, Germany and Turkey criticized Israel's plan to step up its Golan Heights population. So, definitely looks like that is something else that'll be going on in that conversation as well. And regime change in Syria raises fear for Kurds and the ISIS prisoners they guard. So, fighting in the Syrian Kurdish held areas. So, definitely that's something else going on. And looks like America's Kurdish allies are under threat in a new Syria. So, U.S. backed fighters are already losing hope in post Assad Syria. And Ukraine says North Koreans took heavy casualties during a weekend attack in the Kursk region. So Ukrainian forces claim significant casualties among North Koreans in Kursk. So definitely they were saying that those troops were killed as they fought alongside the Russian forces. So definitely lots going on in that space. North Korean soldiers attacked Russian forces by mistake due to language barrier, according to what Ukraine is saying. And definitely that would be interesting as well. And Assad claims he wished to keep fighting as Syrian regime failed, but Russians evacuated him. Al-Assad wanted to stay and fight rebels, statement says, but that's his first statement since leaving that particular country and everything. A Chinese spy has been linked to Prince Andrews, and some folks are saying that that's the tip of the iceberg. So, alleged Chinese spy linked to Prince Andrews, named as Yang Tingbo. So, a royal row over spying poses challenges for Starmer on China. So, suspected Chinese spy linked to Prince Andrews has been banned from the UK. So, we'll see how that all plays out as well. And 5 freed members of the Bali 9 drug gang relieved and happy to be home. So, Bali 9 drug smugglers have returned to Australia, and human body can only take so much home in Australia. Remaining Bali 9 face their new normal. So, it looks like the Indonesia, or at least the Bali 5 now, its new leader wants to send a strong message to the world. So, it looks like at least some of the members have gotten to go back home and all along those lines. South Korean president doesn't respond to summons after martial law declaration. So South Korea court begins review of president's impeachment over martial law. So that's something else that's going on in the world as well. So lots going on that we can talk about, including some things in the U.S. as well. So I'm going to see who's with me, see what they've got to say about a number of these activities and all along those lines and all in that space. So we're definitely going to see who's here. I see that Nick's with me, and we'll see if anybody else joins me as well. But we've definitely got some interesting news going on in the world. Two were arrested in Boston as the investigation into drone sighting in the Northeast continues. Two men suspected of flying drones dangerously close to Logan Airport are charged with trespassing, according to the police. And overnight snow and freezing rain could make for icy roads on Monday morning. So definitely that's what some folks were dealing with up there in the Northeast and all along those lines. And the FBI is probing an alleged child sex abuse in a little-known Christian sect. So that's something else that's in the news. While a Memphis man is guilty of murdering his wife during their honeymoon, according to a Fiji court and everything. So Memphis man guilty of killing wife during their Fiji honeymoon. And apparently the Tennessee man beat his wife to death on their Fiji honeymoon and attempted to flee in a kayak. So that's something else that folks are talking about as well. And RFK Jr. has a battle plan to get Senate confirmation. So Trump helps pick RFK Jr. to meet with senators amid concerns over his stance on vaccines and abortion. So Republicans see agriculture and abortion, not vaccines, as the top Kennedy concern. So we'll see how this all plays out as well. And Harris tells DNC staffers after devastating layoffs, our spirit will not be defeated. And I've also heard Biden and Harris thank major Democratic donors and urge them to stay engaged after tough loss to Trump. And Biden and Harris urge Democrats to keep the faith at the DNC holiday reception. Biden hailed the historic achievements and urges Democrats at DNC reception to keep the faith and all along those lines. And I've even heard some speculation, because I guess she talked to some of her donors, that Harris is thinking about possibly a California governorship race or possibly even another run at the presidency. But we'll see all of what's going on. But apparently she's talking to various advisors, and we'll see what that holds for her future in 2026 and 2028. A rare tornado tears through California, flips cars, and uproots trees. So yes, they even occasionally get them in California as well. And the remains of a missing Illinois man was discovered in a pickup truck buried in Mississippi River. So homicide investigation underway after Illinois man missing for 5 years found dead in a pickup buried in Mississippi River. So that's something else going on in that part of the world. And United Healthcare CEO murder suspect hires top Manhattan lawyer as extradition looms. And the mother of the suspect in the CEO's killing told police person of interest could be her son, according to sources out there in the media world. So definitely looks like Luigi Mangione is expected to waive extradition, and definitely we'll see how this all plays out and how that particular trial goes in and all in that way. Biden to establish the Frances Perkins National Monument in Maine. So Biden to establish a national monument for the first female cabinet secretary. So definitely we'll see this going on as well. And Trump and his picks are threatening more lawsuits over critical coverage. So ABC News had a $15 million settlement with Trump, and definitely they agreed to give $15 million to Donald Trump's presidential library to settle the defamation lawsuit. Mayor Brandon Johnson's new budget plan in Chicago has no property taxes, and looks like he's got some other things that he's doing as well, but there will be no property tax hike, and Chicago leaders think that they can still fix the runaway budget and all along those lines. So apparently they voted on a 2025 budget, which now includes a controversial $40 million short-term loan. So definitely that's something going on. And a teenage boy accused of killing four family members in New Mexico home. So New Mexico State Police are investigating the quadruple homicide in Belen, and 16-year-old is in custody after that suspected case, and all along those lines. And coming back to Kennedy, Kennedy's lawyer has asked the FDA to revoke approval of the polio vaccine. So definitely we'll see how this all plays out as well. So polio vax petition could preview more challenges. So definitely we'll see how this all plays out and what folks have to say about a number of these stories as well. And apparently, victims were shocked after Biden granted clemency to the Kids for Cash judge and a $54 million embezzler. So, Western New York woman granted computation in the largest single day act of clemency, which was held sometime back a few days ago, and all along those lines. So, definitely, there's still people talking about Cash Patel. And some ex-FBI officials are worrying that Cash Patel, as director, may wield unlimited power. So, like I said, lots going on in the world, including U.S. lawmakers telling Apple and Google to be ready to remove TikTok from stores on January 19th. So, U.S. lawmakers are telling Apple and Google to be ready to remove TikTok from app stores on January 19th. And we'll see how folks think about that and what their thoughts are in that regards and all along those lines. So, like I said, lots going on in the world and with world news and all in that space. So, like I said, a lot's taking place, and we'll see what folks have to say in this conversation. I've got Rick Rosner with me, and like I said, there's been a number of things taking place. So, Rick, you've been following the news. I'm glad that you're here. I think Nick's with us as well. So we got Nick with us also. So how's everybody doing on this day? It looks like there was a serious tragedy in France, but we just got rain out here. But definitely a serious tragedy with that cyclone that killed and devastated that area of Mayotte.
Okay. Yeah, that isn't what we hear about a lot over here in Europe. We're hearing about Syria being Assad being thrown out, because it makes a big difference over here. There's a lot of Syrian refugees in Spain and Germany and Europe that are positioned to actually go back to Syria. And I'm talking about 800,000 in Germany alone, and I don't know how many in Spain and all these other countries. So we're going to see probably mass immigration going back, or re-immigration of people back into Syria. But also, they did have a special on the BBC on the immigration problem and smugglers in general. And even though one commentator incorrectly said that 10,000 was too much to pay to become legal, what happens is that the coyotes take 6,000. So he's basically wrong. In other words, if you want to get across the borders today, you're going to spend 6,000 to 10,000 to do it illegally. So my position that they'll spend 10,000 to do it illegally, to do it legally, is correct. It'll bring revenue into the United States, which we desperately need, get rid of this whole deportation business, and cover the cost of the administrative law judges that need to do background checks and the background checks. So, in my opinion, charging them 10,000 will work, and not do deportation. Fine them, and then put them on a path to citizenship. Collect $10,000 per each one. Now, if they balk at it and you do catch them, then you deport them. Seriously. In other words, it's not catch and release. It's, okay, I don't want to spend the 10,000. Ain't no problem. We have a free plane ticket to somewhere else but here. We're going to drop you off, whatever your home country is. And goodbye. Sayonara. So I think that idea needs to be sent up the flagpole, and hopefully they'll do that. Another thing they talk about is this. This is absolutely insane. RFK to revoke polio vaccine. Mm-hmm. It is my prediction. I want to say it here because I predicted Trump. But I want to predict that RFK will not be confirmed because he's too much of a lunatic. In other words, there's too many senators. Too many senators who can recognize a lunatic when they see one. And the polio vaccine, people don't remember the iron lung and how bad it really was to get polio. But this lunatic, otherwise known as RFK, will not pass through the confirmation.
Well, senators, Republican senators only get so many no votes, maybe zero before they get primary the next time they run.
Yeah, but this is going to be a no vote because the thing is he's pretty easy to say no to. I believe he'll not ever sit as head.
Well, if you say no to RFK, then you're increasing the odds that Tulsi Gabbard and Pete Hegseth get confirmed or cash to
and maybe, but they're not as lunatic as this guy is. This guy is off the charts. I mean, if you're going to choose a lunatic, you got to choose your lunatic.
All right. Speaking of lunatics, the part of the U.S. are being lunatics in thinking that commercial aircraft are drones.
Mm-hmm.
The New Jersey area is freaking out that there are drones swarming around them. There probably are some drones, and there are hobbyist drones, which are only this big. But then you have professional drones that are scary, I guess, and run 6 to 8 feet across. But then you have people who can't tell the difference between the lights of a drone and the lights of a commercial aircraft. And there's also a who gives a flip, because why would China care about surveilling New Jersey?
No, China does weird things. I don't think that they are. But I'll also tell you this, because as I finally got placed at English-speaking television in Zaragoza. Zaragoza actually stands for Caesar Augustus. It's between Barcelona and Madrid. And since they couldn't really say Caesar Augustus, they go Zaragoza, which is Caesar Augustus. Okay. That being said, there is a television network called CGTV, which is called Chinese government-controlled television. Basically, that's all I can say. Right. It's a Chinese propaganda television here in Spain and throughout Europe. There used to be RT, which is Russian Times. I believe they eradicated. I used to watch it. I was going, oh, this is pretty good. It's like CNN. And then when I said, what's RT stand for? It stood for Russian Times. So what it was basically a television network that was a front for Russia. China has one here too, China Government Television, and it's broadcast here in Europe all the time. And what it does is tell you how great and wonderful China is, and they ignore everybody else.
We get that in our newspaper, the LA Times. I don't know if they still do it, because we only get the LA Times 2 days a week now, but there's a little sub newspaper tucked in called China Watch, which is from China, where it's 80%, feel good stories about stuff, and then 20% stories that are trying to make you think that China's our friend.
Speaking of people being our friends and everything along those lines, there was another interesting story. I actually sent it to your friend, Nick, Jonathan Lockwood, and everything, because it was a story on something that he's been very big on lately and everything, which is the Space Force, because definitely there is a talk, and it came out yesterday, that it looks like we're going to actually get one. So the U.S. military is now talking openly about going on the attack in space. So we have to build capabilities to provide our leadership, offensive and defensive options. Last year, Space Operation Command unveiled its first official painting titled High Ground Intercept, commissioned with artist Rick Herder. So it illustrates a U.S. military space plane intercepting an adversary satellite, which in turn is positioned to disable a friendly satellite. So apparently, and I know he's been talking about it on this network and everything, earlier this year, officials at U.S. Space Command released a list of priorities and needs, and among the routine recitation of things like cyber defense, communications, and surveillance was a relatively new term, integrated space fires. So I sent him the copy of this article, because it looks like that Space Force that he wants might be closer than we think. So, and one reason for the change in how the military talks about warfare in space is that the nation's top two strategic adversaries, China and Russia, are already testing capabilities that can destroy or disable a U.S. military satellite. So the Space Force was established nearly 5 years ago in December 2019 to protect U.S. interests in space. Satellites provide the military with intelligence, data, navigation, communications, and support missile defense. And in the next few years, they will become even more crucial for weapons targeting and battle management. So it looks like we've got this guy, General Chance Saltzman. He's the Space Force Chief of Space Operations, but it looks like it could be a real thing, because Saltzman said, and then I'll let y'all comment, space is a warfighting domain. He said at a Space Force Association Space War Power Conference in Orlando, Florida, 10 years ago, I couldn't say that. That's the starting point. Think about that. In 2014, we had senior leaders starting to talk about space and war in the same sentence. They kind of berated by the senior leadership. So this is a relatively new condition. when we're talking about war fighting in space, I don't think we should underestimate the power of that. So it looks like that's what he's been talking
about. 50 years, the countries did a lot of lip service, paid a lot of lip service to space being only for peaceful purposes.
Right.
Nobody owns space. Obviously, that's going away, and there are millions of pieces of debris, orbiting Earth, which can be turned into weapons. I mean, one way to fight in space is just to change the trajectory of objects so they crash into your targets.
That would be very interesting. By the way, economics, we're rerunning economics for the next couple of weeks because David Walker will be testifying in front of Congress for the next couple of weeks. Okay. So with that, we're going to rerun the media show. And I felt really bad about running a media show because there's two really great things that happened. One, ABC settling with Donald Trump for $15 million. Mm-hmm. This is kind of
that's just, it's been being called kissing the ring. That you don't. I mean, Morning Joe and Mika went down to Mar-a-Lago to visit with Trump. Like everybody is, there's a strong temptation for media to kiss Trump's butt because they're afraid of the consequences if they don't.
Yeah, and that might be true, but there's one group that doesn't seem to be afraid of them, and that is China. Xi Jinping, according to the sources I read, was invited to go to his inauguration, and he said, "No, I'm not going." So China is one country that doesn't care. Now, that could be a mistake because Trump is kind of a, how do you call it, a middle school kid? In other words, if he went and kissed Trump's ring, he may not install 100% tariffs. But because his ring may not be kissed, you might see tariffs in China to actually reach 100% because he has been threatening 100% tariffs on all the BRICS country. Well, if his ring isn't kissed, then he may go, "Oh, you don't come to my inauguration, here's 100% tariff." Seriously, because that's how he thinks. It's like he's a very simple guy. So China isn't going to show up. And so my prediction, if China doesn't kiss his ring, you're going to see 100% tariffs on China.
Go ahead. I was just going to say that's not even entirely true because remember, Trudeau and even the Mexican president, she actually came out because evidently Trudeau went down to Mar-a-Lago to talk to Trump, and Trump is still planning on putting tariffs against Canada. And he already has threatened multiple times against Mexico, and both of them have pushed back in saying that trade war and we will retaliate if you do put tariffs on it. So I don't think China is going to bend the knee to be wannabe king because they know that.
Oops, you're frozen. While you're frozen, I just want to mention that Space Force, there's already been a sitcom, a good one with Steve Carell called Space Force, but there could be another one that's just space janitors. That's a bunch of like American, military people in space cleaning up all the orbiting crap.
Yeah, I think you're going to see a big push on that because if the United States does use its military budget wisely, creates defensive mechanisms in space, that will put China and Russia at a major disadvantage in threatening the nuclear saber rattling, which is taking place right now. So
it's easy to destroy stuff in orbit. It's hard to knock ballistic missiles down.
No, I understand that. But see, one thing that was very impressive was Israel being able to take down all those incoming missiles that came in from Iran.
Except the missiles are probably traveling, 800, 900 miles an hour, and ballistic missiles go 12,000 miles an hour.
Yeah, but the thing is, I'm not an expert in that area, right? But the thing is, if you're able to create a defensive system against fast-moving rockets, you have a strategic advantage.
Well, it was called Star Wars under Reagan. It didn't work at all, but it tricked the Soviet Union into spending enough money to go bankrupt and fall.
Yeah. Well, an interesting thing that Mark brought up is TikTok going by. TikTok. Now it's TikTok going by.
got that.
And since we have Adam Lampereau here, our constitutional law expert, here's what I see the question to be. Is TikTok a free speech platform or is it a data gathering platform? In other words, if it's a data gathering platform guised under free speech, then they might have a problem, and they may not. They may be TikTok may be bye-bye. But if don't we have free speech issues by just singling out TikTok and getting rid of them? So I know I'm throwing Adam a curve. He's trying to get his Rutgers football team winning again, but unfortunately, Bill Belichick went to UNC, which is part of the ACC.
Yeah, Bill Belichick, that's a critical development for UNC. I think Bill Belichick is going to bring UNC into national prominence. As far as TikTok goes, I think there are serious First Amendment issues there. And I think that any legislation banning TikTok is going to run into a problem under the First Amendment because they are regulating content and they're discriminating on the basis of content. Now, I'm not saying that the speech on TikTok should be protected under the First Amendment, but it is. So there are going to be significant First Amendment issues that I think will lead to that legislation being invalidated.
Yeah, you're worried with TikTok. You're worried about your wife banging the pool boy when she's really banging her Pilates trainer. And the Pilates trainer is freaking AI. China could give a crap about stealing our data. And TikTok's very similar to every other, social media and internet thing that steals our data. But what's coming for us is freaking AI, which uses the data that may or may not have been stolen to come up with sophisticated models of our behavior. It's not there yet, but that's what we have to worry about. If you've tried using AI lately, it's gotten much faster and much smarter.
Yeah, but they're using the data just to sell you stuff. I mean, The thing is, what's nefarious about the fact that you like to look at, let's say, purses or something, and then they keep saying,
right? But we got sold. Yeah. We got sold a certain presidential candidate in 2016, and in 2024, where we can argue about the qualities of that candidate, but the propaganda that we were bombarded with definitely increased his chances. And that's dumb propaganda. That's just like, here's some stuff, here's a ton of stuff. What happens in 4 years and 8 years when we're getting highly sophisticated propaganda that's smarter than we are?
All right, well, here's the problem.
Okay, go
ahead.
The problem regarding the presidential election and social media is that social media gives a platform to millions of idiots on both sides of the political spectrum who disseminate disinformation, who have shallow conversations, and who contribute nothing to the debate except to mislead and misinform people. That is the deleterious effect of social media. Now, you can't just single out TikTok and say TikTok is somehow so nefarious while not recognizing that Facebook and Twitter have contributed to this misinformation campaign, particularly Facebook, by agreeing to a degree with the Biden administration to suppress certain information and discriminate against the content of speech, such as during the COVID era. So social media is a huge problem. It's a problem for other reasons, such as affecting people's mental health and diverting people's attention away from actually interacting with people and instead of their phones. But the disinformation has now become a way of life because we have given millions and millions of idiots a platform.
Yeah. So Elon, let's just take Elon Musk, for example. He contributed 217 million to Trump's campaign. But since the election, according to this one article, his net worth has doubled from $200 billion to $400 billion.
Right.
But a lot of that's the value of his stock. I mean, the thing is, when they say it's not like you can go to the bank and cash that in. What happens, and we followed his Tesla stock, his SpaceX stock, those are the most overvalued stocks you can possibly imagine, sometimes 1,000 times earnings. What does that mean? Imagine if you earned $100 a year, you're now worth $100,000. I mean, it's all fake.
Yeah, but Twitter X now is packed with Tesla, with true believers.
Well, let's look at who was pushing the propaganda. And as Exhibit A, I will show you MSNBC. I have never seen a media organization peddle such lies and such propaganda on a daily basis that it ceased to be a media organization or even an advocacy organization. It was a joke, okay? And CNN finally has come back towards the middle somewhat. But what you saw from the media, you saw it during the presidential debate, you saw it during the vice presidential debate, you saw it on ABC when they interviewed J.D. Vance, you saw it on CNN when they interviewed J.D. Vance. The bias and the misinformation that these outlets have disseminated really is the true interference with democracy. And as Exhibit B, let's look at George Stephanopoulos and ABC having to pay $15 million for defaming Trump and saying during the campaign that he was convicted of rape. The media is the problem.
Whichever, regardless of what side you're on, what the one point you made, Adam, is the simplicity of the discussion. Like we have economics with David Walker. None of his issues, which are like huge burning issues, they hardly ever made it onto Fox, onto MSNBC, onto CNN, onto OAN, onto Newsmax, anywhere. It's yelling about like Tim Waltz's military service and JD Vance.
But part of the reason why, Rick, it's above their pay grade, they really don't comprehend the problem enough to be able to talk about it intelligently. Unlike David Walker, he was the Comptroller General of the United States. He understood this problem going back several decades, realizing that ultimately, if you keep going down this path, interest on your debt will be your biggest expenditure. And unfortunately, now it's close to it.
Hey,
and
Nick.
like you said, what do you get for interest on the debt? You get nothing.
Nick and Adam and Rick, quick question for everybody here, because there's an article, ironically, it was from MSNBC and everything, but what are our thoughts, and we talked about on this network for a while, about these millionaires and billionaires that are basically buying their influence and everything, because they're saying, and it's not to one party, because they did it under Barack and they did it under Biden, they've done it under everybody, but apparently tech tycoons are lining up to donate big sums of cash to President-elect's inaugural fund ahead of his next stint in the White House. So apparently Jeff Bezos and his Amazon has pitched in $1 million. Mark Zuckerberg's Meta has tossed in another $1 million, and OpenAI CEO Sam Altman scrounged up $1 million of his own. So
it's a cheap bet to make. If you're worth $100 billion and you donate $1 million, which is 1/100,000th of your wealth to Trump, hoping he'll look upon you favorably, that's like us donating a sandwich.
Yeah, and also they've done some studies on this, Mark, that your return on investment by donating to political campaigns is about 6 times. And one PAC I used to work with, which is NIFA PAC, we donated millions and millions of dollars. All I did on my committee is write checks to both parties, whoever you think would win. You're like placing bets. And our message to them, you'll love this. This is what we wanted them not to do. Do not tax the cash value buildup of a life insurance policy. And that was our big thing, because if you did, that would harm the industry, because all the insurance company sales pitches basically, you build up the cash value tax free and you distribute it tax free. If you lost,
I have to say thank you, because Carol and I have a bunch of insurance policies, and we don't pay tax on them. And you could
when you make distributions out. And so Index UL is big, and the industry spends a lot of money, and this is corporate money. So it's not just individual money. There's corporate money that is floating around Washington, D.C. One congressman, we gave them $600,000 to their campaign to basically move them in the direction not to tax cash value buildup in insurance. But what you have in Washington, D.C. is huge amounts of lobbyists. To the extent our company even represented a lobbyist group. I can't tell you the company, but what they did is they basically put you with high-powered senators and congressmen to tell your story. So this has been going on for years in Washington, D.C. Now, the real question is, we keep hearing from the Republicans, we're going to drain the swamp, we're going to drain the swamp. Now, I want to see how they're going to drain the swamp when they contribute to the rainfall in Washington, D.C. This is going to
So my dad, let me just make a dumb point. My dad was a small businessman, and he liked to give other businessmen in town business. So every once in a while, he'd just buy me a new life insurance policy. So I had 9 policies on my life. And yeah, it's a great deal because they accumulate cash, but I have to keep asking my wife not to kill me for the insurance money.
Well,
that is a bit of a problem. And there are true stories where people will take out large life insurance policies on individuals and kill them off. Because that people don't know about some of the plans that we do, when you get a large life policy, there is financial underwriting. What they do is they want to make sure that you have enough money in the bank to support the death benefit, so you won't, the odds are you won't kill your spouse off to get the death benefit. But this is just one tip of the iceberg. I'm telling you, it's throughout our whole system.
Nick, along those lines, because
I don't know what Adam thinks about that, but it's.
So I was going to add something to that, because one of the things, even with the insurance, and I know that's your lane, Nick, and everything, but they're saying that more than, I think it was released on Friday, 5 million American children, and we know that there's an issue even with among American children, have lost their Medicaid coverage after states were required to recertify Medicaid recipients' eligibility. So it looks like there's a whole lot of kids that are going to be running around without insurance, depending on what their parents can do and everything like that. So I just wanted to just say, concerned that we should be concerned about the fact that there are a number of kids.
Your insurance system in the United States suck. 34 out of 35 top Western countries have some form of universal care, similar to Social Security for everybody. The United States, and this was brought out by Elon Musk, which is correct, we have the number 1 expense in healthcare. We're number 42 to 47 in life expectancy. That is not a good metric. Now, one of the solutions is to allow drugs like Ozempic to lower the cost. In other words, because we have an obese society. And I think he's right. How they're going to do it is going to be the real question. Because
okay, well,
are horrible.
Let's talk about why healthcare is how it is in the United States. It begins with the citizens themselves. Most people walking around eating donuts and binging on sugar, and we're suffering from an epidemic of obesity, diabetes, autoimmune diseases that are the product of personal choice. Second, a universal healthcare system in the United States with 330 million people would be an absolute disaster. It would increase wait times. It would force us to choose who to prioritize for various surgeries, and it would cost lives, and it would also cost over $1 trillion. Typically, anything the government gets involved in is inefficient because of the incompetent bureaucrats who run it. It would be a disaster in this country. The answer is to have more of market competition for different types of healthcare insurance based on what they cover and what they don't. Some plans will cover certain procedures, some won't. We need more interstate market competition.
All right, here's how you
agree with that part. You're going to have to go one direction or the other. Adam.
Here's how you salvage healthcare in this country. It's a simple change, and all you do is you pass a law that says that from now on, Obamacare, also called the Affordable Care Act, will hereafter be known as Trump Care, and Medicare will be called also Trump Care. That means you get all the Republican states embracing it, and people, it's not the best coverage, but it's better than what we had before.
Well, Rick, I want to give tax credits to people. I'm a big believer in tax credits. I want to give tax credits to every citizen who maintains a BMI between 24 and 26.
So let them have Ozempic. Like, the one reason that we, in the 70s, I'm old enough, you're not quite old enough to remember the 70s when everybody was skinny as hell from jogging and cocaine. Nobody had to wear a bra. Nobody had butts. Nobody had boobs. And then food got delicious and cheap, and everybody got fat. Give them Ozempic. people will lose weight when 70%, 75% of American adults are obese or overweight. It's not a personal failure. It's the deliciousness and availability of calories.
I disagree with that, because if you want to give people Ozempic, I'm fully on board with that. But that reflects a philosophy that we have to fix a problem rather than trying to fix the underlying behavior. We can have more sustainable change. How many people do you see come into a hospital, 350 pounds, diabetes, and still binging on donuts?
A ton.
Donuts is a behavioral problem that you have to address if you want sustainable change, not just Ozempic.
It's addictive. The problem with sugar,
So-
I hate to say it because it's addictive. And so the thing is, what you're doing is you're trying to punish people for being addicted to things. And, sugar's addictive. Yeah, Jacoby has something to say. Jacoby, you're happy to join this conversation. I am, but go on.
I think what we tend to do with the idea of the healthcare debate is we tend to focus only on obesity. Obesity, yes, a huge issue in the U.S., and yes, it does need some focus. But we also forget that there are other issues out there, and honestly, yes, interstate competition would be great. But the problem is we don't have if you go on a trip, it is more than likely that your doctor will be outside of your network that if you get injured. That's a big, big problem. So, for example, if you have a special needs child, because honestly, with the rise in autism or with the rise in other disabilities that are out there, that is something that we never think about or consider when we're talking about healthcare. When you're talking about pulling Medicare and Medicaid, that is what's covering the majority of those with special needs. And when we are pulling the funds from this and that and the other thing, those special needs families are going to suffer tremendously. So we forget about that. But again, it gets back to a huge problem is the fact that half the time the doctor or the nurse or the medical facility that's within your network is not close to you when you're going on a trip, or maybe even going to visit somebody, or even when they pick you up from an emergency fall. They have to find a doctor within your network. So that's
right, and that may be true. That may be true. What I'm trying to argue is that we need to have a cultural change. We need to change behaviors, because if we change behaviors, then people are going to be healthier and live longer. You're not going to solve the problem just by giving them medications. So I want to give tax credits to people who hold on. I want to give tax credits to people who maintain a relatively healthy way. I want to give tax credits to women who do not get pregnant at 12 and thereby sink into poverty. I want to incentivize good behavior, and by incentivizing good behavior, you change the culture.
Let's talk about because we're not birth rates.
And I want to penalize men who abandon their wives and leave them with a kid.
All right, birth rate. We can solve all that with Ozempic. Here's the deal: birth rates are way down. You put people on those, I don't know what percent, probably 10% of American males are so fat they can't even see their dick without using a mirror. You get people skinny again. The 70s were the horniest decade in American history. Everybody was skinny. You get people skinny again. They start having sex.
I missed it.
Americans start having more babies. People are worried that white people who are being out reproduced. They start, anyway.
But the thing is, you're talking about Nick. I mean, you're talking about Adam about changing habits. Yes, that's true. But the changing of a habit is going to take decades upon decades. So sure, you can give the tax credits. Please don't throw in the idea of, we want a 12-year-old. That doesn't even, that's just hyperbole.
I lived in Indiana for 4 years, and I saw.
I get it, Adam. You saw what's in your backyard is always what's really happening. So again, the fact of the matter is, you legitimately just said
there's an epidemic of single parent families among the white and black population.
Okay, Adam, I get that. But you're not listening to what I'm stating, because you went on the tangent about 12-year-old girls wanting to have sex. And that is not the norm.
I was being hyperbolic. Give me a
that's
break.
what I just stated. And you're coming at me because I point out that you're being hyperbolic.
But there's truth to the fact that you have many young people getting pregnant in poverty.
Let's not argue, Adam. Let's not argue over the hyperbole, because the hyperbole isn't the norm. And arguing over the hyperbole is a false argument. So
73% of black children grow up in single-parent families, and that's the exception, not the rule.
Adam, and you want to ignore the fact that many black families or black fathers end up in jail based on the systemic racism that you tend to ignore or say that's not real. So let's not get into that debate.
Yes, systemic racism is the reason why they're committing violent crimes. White people and black people.
Now you're saying, now are you saying
not just black people?
Now are you saying that black people are inherently violent? Because that's what your statement is coming out at.
Of course they're not.
So thank you. Can we get back to the healthcare debate before we go on some rabbit hole?
It's your floor.
Thank you. So when we're talking about healthcare, and yes, changing habits is going to take decades upon decades. What Rick is talking about with Ozempic is true and helpful, because we need something now, just as we need to change the energy policy and get to renewables. You need transition. Just like we're changing habits, you need a way to transition to those. So Ozempic could be that transition and could be helpful to those trying to lose weight.
What's the efficacy of Ozempic?
It releases hormones that tell you you're full. So
what are the side effects?
What? So let's, Michelle Obama told us to clean up our eating and our health, and people hated that.
And she was right.
RFK Jr. is saying the same thing. He might not even get confirmed. Now, I like to eat some crappy food. Every time I eat crappy food, I drop a bunch of pills on it. I drop like 3 different cholesterol blockers. I used to take a fat blocker, but it gave me like horrible poops and farts. So I don't do that. But I eat something sweet. I take a metformin. I counter my bad habits, which aren't that bad, but with pills.
You don't solve health care problems with medication. You solve them over the long term with changes in behavior that incentivize good choices. And what incentivizes that? Money. That's going to create a culture change. You want to put a Band-Aid on the problem instead of addressing the cause of the problem.
We have pills are what are going to give us extra decades of life. In 10 years, there will be pills you can take that will add 5 or 10 years to everybody's.
But people don't want to be in a position where they have to take pills for sustainable lifespan. They want to be healthy. They want to live a healthy, drug-free life. And you have to incentivize good behavior. Choices and decisions matter.
Adam, everyone agrees with that. Everyone agrees. It would be great not to have any medication or anything. Everybody agrees with that. But that's not where we are. The reality of the situation, we need transitions to get there. The reality of the situation is this is a big, complicated issue. And there are forms of depression that cannot be solved with just, hey, change your habits and you'll be just fine. There are forms of other medical issues that are out there, even obesity, thyroid problems, so on and so forth, that cannot just be solved by saying, hey, you know what?
Obesity is not a mental illness.
It doesn't work that way. So this is where the science and the understanding of the medical industry is what we should be focused on. And yes, putting money more there and putting more trust there and not campaigning against it all the time. Because right now, just as Rick literally pointed out, this whole medical industry is politicized. Michelle Obama tried to do the healthy lunches. All the Republicans hated it. Oh, then someone else tried to do it. Oh, the Republicans hated it. Oh, they tried to do this. It was Gavin Newsom tried to cut down on. Even Bloomberg tried to cut down on big sodas. Oh, this is Hitler. This is they're coming after.
Okay,
but now when you agree with it, and now when we're going to send out this information ourselves, it's all okay. That's politicizing a problem.
I'm not campaigning against Ozempic, and I believe medications do serve an important role as a stopgap measure. But the long-term focus should be on changing and incentivizing good behavior. Have you ever been to Western Europe and see how these folks eat and what they do? They walk a lot. They have portion control.
Why do
They're
you think we're
actually
arguing
educated.
this?
No, you are arguing it because you do not agree that we should be incentivizing good behavior. You are agreeing with him that medications should be, and medications do have a role, but behavioral choices are the solution to overall good health and increased lifespan.
Again, Adam,
So
we talked about
1% of Americans have a computer in them, have a computer chip in them, whether it's a pacemaker.
Called the brain.
All right. So if you have Parkinson's, like Michael J. Fox, he's got a pacemaker in his brain that helps regulate the pineal gland, whatever the gland is that pumps out L-Dopa, which is totally faulty, but he's got a thing in his brain that helps him move. So what happens when it's not a pill? It's Musk's Neuralink or somebody else's brain chip that helps you regulate your eating and regulate your behavior, and a chip that like makes you horny for your wife even though she's 320 pounds.
Rick, that's okay to I'm not saying it's not okay to use that, but wouldn't it be better if people's behavior wasn't regulated by a drug but was regulated by their own choices? Think of the freedom in that.
It's freaking hard to.
Yeah, it's hard. Guess what? Welcome to life. It's goddamn hard. And the people who do the hard are the successful ones.
Why not have something that does it for you so you can direct your attention to other stuff?
Because if it does it for you, you're eventually going to revert back to your behaviors. It is an empirical fact.
Not if you're chipped or if you're on a drug that says, "Nah, I'm full. I don't need to eat 8 donuts."
Oh, I believe in personal empowerment. I don't want to be reliant on a drug to make choices for me that I should make myself. Yeah, it's hard. Well, guess what? Life is hard. And if you don't make the right choices, you suffer the consequences. Now, medication like yours that you're supporting, I would agree with. But I don't think that's the best option. I think there's a better one.
So what about, I keep arguing about a chip that makes you smarter so you can have more discipline. So you can make...
Got healthcare debaters. Can we learn from countries that are successful? First of all, the United States is not successful by any metric. Number 1 in health expenditures in the world, 47th in life expectancy. Spain is one of the more healthy countries. They're in the top 10, if not top 5 in life expectancy. And they spend like a quarter of what they do in the US. Now, one thing Adam brought up, which is a possible solution, have a free market for health insurance. However, there's no metric in the world that shows that works. Number 2, you actually have socialized medicine, which 34 countries in Europe have. And every metric shows that does work. Not that I'm in favor of it. I'm willing to go with either one. I would go with either an open market for health insurance or do like they do in Spain. Everybody must join. But the first time I joined, you know what they did? They saw my BMI, and my health insurance agent went ballistic on me. He goes, "What's going on there? You know, your BMI is off control." He says, "You're going to have to get it down. You're going to have to get it down. They're going to kick you out of the system because basically you're an American. You're too fat." You didn't say that, but that's the bloody truth. And part of the problem we have is that when I go in America, there's fast food lane up and down every street. Here, there's hardly any. It's all mom, pa. They get the food off the farm, they stick it there, and mom, pa makes the food for you. And it's a healthy Mediterranean diet. That's what they all eat here. But there's a lot of pressure, social and legal, to keep people's BMI down. Unfortunately, there are McDonald's and Popeyes here, but they're very few and far between. But somewhere along the line, we're going to have to do something. Either one, go to the model that Adam recommends, every free market system on all the health insurance, and get rid of these crazy expensive policy monopolies and big companies. Or number 2, you're going to have to go to socialized medicine, which they have in Europe.
Nick, how are you going to do that when so much, that's where I was going to go in the conversation, when so many of those corporations that you're talking about are major lobbies that have a lot of control over the senators. I mean, if you look at the senators, they're not exactly the skinniest bunch of people that I've ever seen. And as we've already seen, a lot of our leadership love the McDonald's and love the fast food. I mean, shucks, I mean, I'm guilty as well that DoorDash and Grubhub and a number of other places make a killing off of the folks that are trying to rip and run and trying to get something to eat while they are ripping and running. So there is an entire industry, including an industry around exercise, because I remember Jane Fonda when she had that whole exercise program, and yeah, I just dated myself and everything along those lines. But there are others that are out there now and everything. So they are very much in control of what's going on. So I hear where you're going, Adam, but I just don't know if you can get it past the people that are in control. I mean, one of the biggest institutions, and it's very guilty, and I'm gonna pick on it to some degree, is the churches. And I don't care whether it's a black or a white church. And if you've ever been to a church dinner, there's a lot of times that they are eating food that is not exactly healthy and all in that environment. So even institutions that are supposed to be encouraging people to live a good life oftentimes find ways to not practice what they preach and everything. So how do you get past that kind of dichotomy?
Well, I think that you have to create a culture where people are rewarded for good choices. They are rewarded by the government for good behavior through tax credits and the like. That is going to incentivize people to make better choices. People aren't going to make better choices on their own. They're living in a society where you go to a Catholic fundraiser and they're serving donuts and every other unhealthy food on the face of the earth. But if they have a reason to change their behavior, they will. The best reason is money.
Hey, Nick, when you're out on the street in Spain, do you see like people who aren't overweight, like canoodling hand in hand? And like,
yes, there's nobody overweight.
Yeah. Well, what Adam said is true. There's almost, when I'm around Spain, I go outside, almost nobody's overweight. Except
so are they hooking up with each other because everybody looks pretty good?
Yeah, they're hanging out. They're actually downstairs and they're eating outside. They eat a lot, but they're eating healthy food. There's no fast food here. The only time I saw overweight people is in Costco area in Zaragoza. They have McDonald's, Popeyes, and all the bad fast food, and then you see the fat people. But the rest of Spain, they're in relatively good shape. But there is a lot of pressure, starting from the insurance agency on down, to keep people's BMI at a low level. My first conversation with the insurance agent was, dude, your BMI is off the charts for Spain. And it's just different.
So what I'm asking is Spain a horny country? Like, I know Israel's a horny country.
Well, of course,
everybody
it's a Catholic country.
Well, hold on a second. Hold on a second. Because we're saying that there's no, I hear what y'all saying. Y'all did more traveling than I did, but I just went to AI, and it says, according to the World Health Organization, as of 2022, approximately 43%, so that's almost 1 out of 2 of the adults worldwide are considered overweight. So it's not something that is.
Well, there's another problem, Mark, that we're not talking about. There's a big problem we're not talking about, and that is people who are poor do not have access to healthy foods. Why? Because they're too expensive. The government needs to start providing food vouchers to people who are poor so that they can be incentivized to eat and be able to shop at Whole Foods. It's not just saying people need to make better choices and incentivizing it through money. It's giving them the means by which they can do so.
Isn't that what SNAP is? Isn't that what SNAP is supposed to be? Isn't that what food stamps is supposed to be?
There's a great opportunity.
No, because food stamps don't have a limitation.
Opportunity for Trump to go on a diet and say, yeah, I'm going to eat health. I'm going to listen to RFK Jr. I myself have a history of being a little overweight. I'm going to go on a diet. I'm going to get healthy, and I want America to go on a diet with me. You know how
he's going to need Ozempic.
So
first, he's not going to be able to do it without
happen because
let him go on Ozempic. He can lie and say that's.
I was going to say that's never going to happen because look at just what happened. You're talking about Donald Trump trying to take advice from RFK and eating healthy. Well, the man just forced RFK to eat McDonald's on an airplane and take a photo. So that's never going to happen. But what I think Mark pointed out in terms of so many hands in the pot, and that's the reason why, as much as you want to say, Adam, hey, we want to give money to these people and give just flat out, SNAP was turned down because people are upset about SNAP.
And Jatovy
Money
is
changes everything.
not coming in, but we have to go because we're at the hour, so we'll have to see everybody tomorrow. But
Good seeing you
while we're
guys.
having the healthcare debate, because you know how many times I've seen the healthcare debate this week on major network? None.
Zero.
Goodbye.